Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaranari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaranari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanechari. Yamunatira Vanechari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jayo Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jayo Jayo Prabhupada, 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 Jayo Jayo Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivarjaka Stotra Sata His Divine Grace I.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Shri Shri Gauranityay ki Shri Shri Radha Vallabh ki Shri Shri Jagannath Baldev Sudaramai ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindi ki Jai Nitya Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So today we are reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter number 31, Text number 10, 4.31.10. Kim janmabhistribhirveha saukara savitra yagnikahi कर्माभिर्वात्रायि प्रोक्तै पुंसो विबुधायुषा किं जन्माभिस्त्रिभिर्वेहा सौकरा सावित्रयज्ञिकहे कर्माभिर्वात्रायि प्रोक्तै पुंसो विबुधायुषा किं जन्माभिस्त्रिभिर्वेहा सौकरा सावित्रयज्ञिकहे कर्माभिर्वात्रायि प्रोक्तैः पुंसो अपि विबुधायुषा. किं जन्माभिस्त्रिभिर्वेहा सौकरा सावित्रयज्ञिकहे कर्मभिर्वात्रायि प्रोक्तैः पुंसोऽपि अभिद्वायुषा. किं जन्माभिस्त्रिभिर्वेहा सौकरा सावित्रयज्ञिकहे कर्माभिर्वात्रायि प्रोक्तैः पुंसोऽपि विबुधायुषा. किं जन्माभिस्त्रिभिर्वेहा सौकरा सावित्रयज्ञिकहे Karmabhirvatrai proktai Pumsopi vibudayusa Kim janmabhistribhirveha Saukara savitra yagnikahi Karmabhirvatrai proktai Pumsopi vibudhayusa. Children? Okay, they are no children today. Kim? What is the use? Janmabhi, of births. Tribhir, three. Va, or. Iha, in this world. Saukara, by semen. Savitra, by initiation. Yagnikahi, by becoming a perfect Brahmana. Karmabhi, by activities. Va, o. Trai, in the Vedas. Proktai, instructed. Pumsaha, of a human being. Api, even. Vibhuda, of the demigods. Ayusha, with a duration of life. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki. A civilized human being has three kinds of births. The first birth is by a pure father and mother, and this birth is called birth by semen. The next birth takes place when one is initiated by the spiritual master, and this birth is called Savitra. The third birth, called Yagnika, takes place when one is given the opportunity to worship Lord Vishnu. Despite the opportunities for attaining such births, even if one gets the lifespan of a demigod, if one does not actually engage in the service of the Lord, everything is useless. Similarly, one's activities may be mundane or spiritual, but they are useless if they are not meant for satisfying the Lord. It is a very long translation. And Prabhupada writes a very long purport as well. It actually goes over 2.5 pages. So in order to absorb what Prabhupada writes in the purport, because it's very long, let's just break down the verse a little bit, and then we can just see if we can follow the thread of Prabhupada's amazing writing here. So I'll just break down the Sanskrit again. Kim janma bhis tribhir veha. So kim janma. Janma means birth, and tribhir veha. Tri means three. So here we can see in the Sanskrit itself that it's talking about three kinds of birth. So just pick that thread. That's the first point. Three types of birth. Kim janma bhis tribhir veha. And what are those three kinds of births? First is Saukara, second is Savitra, and third is Yagnikahi. So that's the second line. Saukara, Savitra, Yagnikahi. Three types of births, and they are Saukara, Savitra, and Yagnikahi. Then the next point. Karma bhir vatrai prokta. Karma bhir. Then Prabhupada will talk about karma, the activities. So birth and then activities. And then the last line. Pumsopi vibudha yusa. Ayush means age or the duration of life. So 3 points are here. Three types of birth. So birth, then activities, karma, and then ayush, which is your lifespan. Yeah. So birth, activities, and life. And then let's read the translation again to capture that, and then the purport. A civilized human being has three kinds of births. The first birth is by a pure father and mother, and this birth is called birth by semen. The next birth takes place when one is initiated by the spiritual master, and this birth is called Savitra. The third birth, called Yagnika, takes place when one is given the opportunity to worship Lord Vishnu. Despite the opportunities for attaining such births, even if one gets the lifespan of a demigod, if one does not actually engage in the service of the Lord, everything is useless. Similarly, one's activities may be mundane or spiritual, but they are useless if they are not meant for satisfying the Lord. Let's read the translation. It's a very long purport. Very long purport. The word Saukara Janma means taking birth by seminal discharge. Animals can take birth in this way too. However, a human being can be reformed from the Saukara Janma as recommended in the Vedic civilization. Before the birth takes place, or before father and mother unite, there is a ceremony called Garbhadhana Samskar, which must be adopted. The Garbhadhana Samskar is especially recommended for higher caste, especially the Brahmana caste. It is said in the Shastras that if the Garbhadana Sanskar is not practiced among the higher castes, the entire family becomes Sudra. It is also stated in this age of Kali, everyone is Sudra due to the absence of Garbhadana Samskar. This is the Vedic system. According to the Pancharatrika system, however, even though one is a Sudra due to the absence of Garbhadana Samskar, if a person has but a little tendency to become Krishna conscious, he should be given the chance to elevate himself to the transcendental platform of devotional service. Our Krishna consciousness movement adopts this Pancharatrika Vidhi as advised by Srila Sanatana Goswami, who says, Yata kanchana tamyati kamshayam rasa vidhanata tatha diksha vidhanena dvijatvam jayate nirnam. As bell metal, which when mixed with mercury is transformed to gold, a person, even though not golden pure, can be transformed into a Brahmana or Dvija simply by the initiation process. Hari Bhakti Vilas 2.12. Thus, if one is initiated by a proper person, he can be accepted as twice born immediately. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we therefore offer the student his first initiation and allow him to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. By chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra regularly and following the regulative principles, one becomes qualified to be initiated as a Brahmana. Because unless one is qualified Brahmana, he cannot be allowed to worship Lord Vishnu. This is called Yagnika Janma. In our Krishna consciousness society, unless one is twice initiated, first by chanting Hare Krishna and second by Gayatri Mantra, he is not allowed to enter the kitchen or duty room to execute duties. However, when one is elevated to the platform on which he can worship the deity, his previous birth does not matter. Chandalopi dvija sreshto Hari Bhakti Parayana Hari Bhakti Vihinascha Dvijopi Swapachadhama. Even if one is born in the family of a Chandal, if one engages in the devotional service of the Lord, he becomes the best of Brahmanas. But even a Brahmana who is devoid of devotional service is on the level of the lowest dog eater. If a person is advanced in devotional service, it does not matter whether he is born as a Chandala family, he becomes purified, as Prahlad Maharaj said. Viparad dvisad guna yutad aravinda nabha pada ravinda vimukhak chwapacham varistham. Bhagavatam 7.9.10. Even if one is a Brahmana and is qualified with all the Brahminical qualifications, he is considered degraded if he is averse to worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if a person is attached to the service of the Lord, he becomes glorified even if he is born of a Chandala family. Indeed, such a Chandala can deliver not only himself, but all his family predecessors. Without devotional service, even a proud Brahmana cannot deliver himself, and what to speak of his family. In many instances in the Shastras, it is seen that even a Brahmana has become a Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, Malichar, or even non-Brahmana. And there are many instances of one's being born as a Kshatriya or Vaishya, or even Lava, and in the 18th year attaining elevation to the Brahmanical platform by the process of initiation. Therefore, Narad Muni says, Yasyaya lakshanam proktam pumso varnabhivyanchakam yad anyatrapi drishyeta tattenaiva vinirdishet. Bhagavatam 7.11.35. It is not a fact that because one is born in a Brahmana family, he is automatically a Brahmana. He has a better chance to become a Brahmana. But unless he meets all the Brahmanical qualifications, he cannot be accepted as such. On the other hand, if the Brahmanical qualifications are found in a person of a Sudra, he should immediately be accepted as a Brahmana. To substantiate this, there are many quotations from Bhagavatam, Mahabharata, Bharadwaj Samhita and the Pancharatra, as well as many other scriptures. As far as the duration of life of demigods, concerning Lord Brahma, it is said, Sahasra Yuga Paranyantam Ahar Yad Brahmano Vidhu Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam Teho Ratra Vidhu Jana. Bhagavad Gita 8.17. The duration of one day of Brahma is 1000 times greater than the 4 yugas, aggregating 4,320,000 years. Similarly, Brahma's one night. Brahma lives for 100 years of such days and nights. The word Vibhudhayusa indicates that even if one gets a long lifespan, his lifespan is useless if he is not a devotee. A living entity is the eternal servitor of Supreme Lord, and unless he comes to the platform of devotional service, his lifespan, good birth, glorious activities and everything else are null and void. Told you it's a long purport. Om Ajnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Nama Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desa Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. So, we'll just see, how this fits in the episode, in the current episode of Bhagavatam, and then Prabhupada wrote a very brilliant and long purport, and we'll just try to bring out some points from that purport. If you can remember, if from what we have read, you can chip in as we go, but otherwise I noted some down, so we can have a quick recap of what he wrote. A lot of things there to digest. So this particular section of Bhagavatam, Maitreya Muni, as we know, is describing the activities of the Prachetas. And that was quite elaborately discussed in the previous chapter, chapter 30. And chapter 31 happens to be also, I think, the last chapter of Canto 4. So we migrate to Canto 5 very soon. So if you recall, even 2 chapters before, chapter 28 or chapter 29, when Lord gave darshan to the Prachetas, after the Prachetas had performed their austerity for 10,000 years underwater. So when Lord gave them their darshan, his darshan, then he granted Prachetas some benedictions. He gave them bhakti, as well as he gave them material opulence. And actually told the Prachetas that you can go and enjoy, the material facilities that I am giving it to you, and continue your bhakti. And the Lord also told them, or warned them, that a point of time will come when you will actually get disgusted with the material opulence, and you will relinquish all of that and then intensify your bhakti. So that's the discussion that evolved, that we saw between Lord and the Prachetas when the Lord gave the darshan. So here we see that in chapter 31, that Lord's foretelling of that, the fact that the Prachetas will get disgusted with the material opulence comes to fruition. We can see that the Prachetas, having progenited, are fed up of material enjoyment, and they renounce their kingdom, very, very opulent kingdom, and then go to the forest to intensify their Krishna consciousness. And at that point in time, Narad Muni appears to them, or comes in front of them, and starts, if I can use the word, reminding maybe, about their duties, about what is bhakti, and so on and so forth, so that they can, go back to Godhead as well. So, in this particular section of Bhagavatam, from the last verse, maybe the one before that, in any case, in the last few verses, Narad Muni starts to enlighten the Prachetas again about bhakti. And this is the beauty of bhakti, that bhakti leads to bhakti. Chanting begets chanting, bhakti leads to more bhakti. So the Prachetas, after doing the austerities, saw Lord Vishnu and got the benediction, and then they did bhakti, and then they did their progenation, so on and so forth. And now, again being spoken about bhakti by Narad Muni. So bhakti never stops, we just keep talking about Krishna Katha at any point in time. So Narad Muni starts enlightening them about bhakti again. And in this particular text itself, which we briefly discussed already, is that Narad Muni is telling them about 3 things. Firstly, the 3 types of janma, and we'll talk about those 3 types of janma, which Prabhupada talks very elaborately in his purports. And then secondly, about the activities. And thirdly, about the lifespan. And Narad Muni is saying in this verse and also the next one, which we will not cover today, but just as a prelude, that all these activities are useless unless they are dovetailed in Krishna consciousness. We can have a very, very opulent, we can have a very prestigious birth, and conversely we can have a very degraded birth. We can have, any type of activities, we can have any duration of lifespan. All of this is useless unless it is dovetailed in Krishna consciousness. So that's the gist of this particular verse. Now what does Prabhupada write then? How does he start? So Prabhupada starts his purport by explaining the definition of Saukara Janma. And as we already heard, that Saukara Janma means that Janma, that is our biological birth from our biological mother and our biological father, which happens through the discharge of the semen from the father to the mother. And Prabhupada then says that even the animals are also born, through this process of a biological mother and a biological father. But the animals do not progress to any higher birth. But the human beings can be reformed. Then Prabhupada says that even, so at the moment he's not talking about somebody who has taken a janma in a Brahminical family. He's just talking about somebody who has taken a janma in a degraded family, as a Saukara Janma. So even Prabhupada is saying that if somebody has taken a very lower birth, he can be reformed. How? Firstly, he talks about the process of Garbhadhana Samskar. Now that we are quite familiar with, through the process of Garbhadhana Samskar, which Prabhupada said that a man and mother and father, or the man and woman should chant 50 rounds of Hare Krishna, at least 50 rounds of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra before they unite for the purpose of progeny. So this is the proactive process. The proactive process is mother and father, husband and wife chanting before they invite a soul in the womb of the mother. And the reactive process is also there, which we will talk about very soon. So then Prabhupada gives the example that this Garbhadhana Samskar was actually recommended in the Vedas for the higher caste, for the Brahmanas. And then he says that if the Brahmanas don't follow this Garbhadhana Samskar, then actually they are degraded. They are not Brahmana, they are actually Sudras. And then Prabhupada says that, by the way, in Kali Yuga, everybody is Sudra. Kalu Sudra Sambhava. So then, who is supposed to be doing this Garbhadhana Samskar? Then Prabhupada says that everybody should do the Garbhadhana Samskar before progeniting, chanting 50 rounds of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra before the husband and the wife unite. And then Prabhupada gives the analogy of a bell metal. Remember that analogy? The bell metal, Prabhupada says, when it is mixed, I think the word he used, mixed with mercury, it becomes gold. So bell metal is not pure, but when mixed with mercury, it becomes gold. So similarly, that if somebody is born in a lower family, in a lower birth, if he is induced with Krishna consciousness, he can also become pure like a gold. He can be purified through the process of Krishna consciousness. So that's the first birth, the Saukara Janma, through our biological parents. And we can purify ourselves if we are not born in a higher family through the process of, at least if the parents have done Garbhadhana Samskar. Now that's the reactive process. If parents have not done that, and a child is attracted to the womb, which is Lord Shiva has put them into the womb of the mother because they were doing probably progeniting over on Friday night, coming back from the pub and all that. So what is their situation? What is their solution? Then Prabhupada talks about Savitra Janma, which we call in our terminology in ISKCON as the first initiation, Harinam Diksha. Yeah. We take the first initiation. So Prabhupada says, that individual person can take Savitra Janma, which is first initiation, and he continues, he has chanted Hare Krishna Maha Mantra for certain time before initiation, continues to chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra after initiation to gradually purify more and more. So that's Savitra Janma. Then the third one is Yagnika Janma. Yagya, of course, we know means sacrifice. So this Janma is given by the spiritual master as the second initiation, or which we call as Brahman initiation. Yeah. So the second initiation happens. And at this point in time, Prabhupada says that after the second initiation, we continue to chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, but we also chant the Gayatri Mantra. Those who are Brahmanas chant the Gayatri Mantra. And this therefore qualifies that individual to do bhoga, cooking bhoga for the Lord, as well as going on the altar to do pujari service. So, three types of Janma. Saukara Janma, Savitra Janma, and then Yagnika Janma. The biological birth, the first initiation, and then the second initiation. Then Prabhupada wrote that the previous birth does not matter. If one is born in a very lower family, he can be purified. He repeated that point. And then Prabhupada said that conversely, if one is born in a Brahmana family, but his activities are not of a Brahmanical quality, then he is as good as a Sudra. So from both viewpoints, Prabhupada balanced that all. And then Prabhupada said that Janma, the higher caste birth, being a Brahmana, is not by birth. It is by our activities. That we have also discussed many times from Bhagavad Gita. Chaturvarnya Maya system, Guna Karma Vibhagasha. Krishna is saying, that our activities decide, what kind of varna we are in rather than our birth. But Prabhupada then says that actually if we are born in a Brahmana family, no doubt that it is conducive to becoming a good Brahmana because the facilities are there, That's just common sense. Now, so much about, the Janma, Remember I said there are three things in this particular ways. The Janma, the activity, and the lifespan, So Janma and the activity we have discussed together. Now we'll talk about the lifespan shortly. But before that, I just wanted to draw some more references about the type of births and how one can be purified from elsewhere in the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, So recently we had been studying Canto 2, so I just want to draw some points from there. In Canto 2, when Parikshit Maharaj asked Sukadeva Goswami this famous question of, what is the duty of someone who is about to die, especially of someone, what is the duty of someone at any point in time, especially of someone who is about to die. So in response to that question, when Sukadeva Goswami starts answering, in Canto 2 of Bhagavatam, we see the famous prayers from Sukadeva Goswami. Bhagavatam has got several prayers at many sections of Bhagavatam. Canto 2 has got those prayers from Sukadeva Goswami. So there Sukadeva Goswami says, this famous line, the Kirata Hundara Pulinda Pulaksha, that if somebody is born, there actually he glorifies the Lord by saying, my Lord is so sweet and so benevolent that he not only takes care of the jnanis, the karmis, the yogis, and of course devotees, but he is so sweet that actually he can also purify those who are born in a family that is very sinful, as well as those who are very sinful themselves. Because there can be cases when somebody is born in a sinful family, but he is not sinful. Prahlad Maharaj is an example, which Prabhupada also quotes. So there can be Vibhishan in Lanka. But here, Sukadeva Goswami is saying that if, my Lord is so sweet that if somebody is so degraded, very, very sinful, even he can be purified through the process of Krishna consciousness. And how does that happen? How does somebody who is so sinful eventually get purified? There is one important thing, and that is devotee association. If we can give devotee association to anybody on the street, Harinam, in Bhakti Vrikshas, elsewhere, then their Krishna consciousness starts from that point in time. And the higher our purification, the quicker we can purify them. Lava matra sadhu sangha sarva shastra koi. If a pure devotee like Prabhupada, if he was to mingle, or give his mercy, to those who were most degraded, they can be quickly purified within months. For us or for me, it may take 3 years or 4 years, for somebody to start, getting them to chant 16 rounds, or, to come to temple and all that, because of my lack of purification. But the higher the purification, the quicker we can purify them. And recently, a lot of online lectures are going on, virtual Krishna Katha, and the one that I generally get hooked to is, His Grace Amanandra Prabhu. And recently I saw, during the first COVID time, the first phase of COVID in March, April, when His Grace Amanandra Prabhu was, lecturing online, and a lot of Bhakti Vriksha audience was there. Several Bhakti Vriksha from Melbourne was his audience, and he used to get 200 logins, in one time. That's 200 logins. That means generally husband and wife. That's 400 people listening at one time. And it was so amazing to see how quickly, with his mesmerizing lectures and his own purification, he could get a lot of Bhakti Vriksha members to chant 64 rounds. There I struggled to get people to chant 16 rounds, in 2 years or 3 years. Prabhuji could get people to chant 64 rounds, very, very newcomers to Krishna consciousness in no time. Why? Because of his sadhana, because of his, the depth of his preaching, the depth of his own purification. So there is the potency. So the point here is, that Prabhupada is saying, yes, we can give Krishna consciousness to anybody, but how much we can give it to them also depends on how much we have. We can only give them what we have, yeah? But as if we are the small sparrows, then we fly that much and preach. And if you are like the big Garuda, then we preach that much, Prabhupada also said. So it just depends, we still preach, regardless of where we are. So that's about the birth and the purification. Then we also saw, that the West covers lifespan. And there Prabhupada then began writing about the lifespan of Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma's lifespan is very big, big number. 4.320 million years only is his 1 day and one day only, not even one night. And then you multiply it by 100. So a big number according to our human tiny calculation, that we see 100 years maximum. If somebody reaches 100 years, then they start coming on TV. Happy birthday, and all those things happens. 100 years is a long time for us. So anyway, so Prabhupada writes, that what is the point in having a long lifespan if that lifespan is not utilized in Krishna consciousness? What's the point? And then again, I'll draw some more references, from elsewhere in Bhagavatam. In the same section, when Maharaj Parikshit asked the question to Sukadeva Goswami, that what is the duty of someone who's about to die? Then amongst all the other, hearing, chanting, Sukadeva Goswami says, Eta nirvidya mananam ichatam akuto bhayam yogi nam nirpanirinitam Hare nam anukirtanam. Famous verse, so Hare nam anukirtanam, that the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is the solution for anybody at any point in time. That's their duty. So there, we know that Sukadeva Goswami is enlightening Maharaj Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit is, let's say, his main audience, but the audience is pretty big. There's many people sitting in that audience. So when Sukadeva Goswami gives this solution, that Hare Nam Anukirtanam is the duty of anybody at any point in time, Maharaj Parikshit could have thought, and keep in mind we are talking about the importance of time, yeah? That's our context at the moment. Maharaj Parikshit could have thought that I have actually got only 7 days left, because I'll be annihilated after 7 days by that snake bird. So is 7 days enough to actually implement the solution that you are giving of hearing and remembering and chanting the holy names of the Lord? Is it enough? So there Sukadeva Goswami quotes the example of Katwanga Maharaj. That Katwanga Maharaj purified himself in one muhurta. And one muhurta happens to be, I think, very small time, yeah? Less than a minute, 40 seconds or something. Something like that? Oh, yeah, very small. Prabhupada writes, actually in the Melbourne temple only, when he was lecturing, he gave this example as well about Katwanga Maharaj. And Prabhupada said that Katwanga Maharaj purified himself in one moment, sitting here in this temple, or was this the temple? But in Melbourne temple, yeah? We had different centers before as well. So Prabhupada said that, we can purify ourselves in one moment. So what to speak of Parikshit Maharaj, who had 7 days, and what to speak about, Brahma, Lord Brahma, who has got, lifespan of a very big number. And then to implement that for us, we don't know our lifespan. It can finish tomorrow, it can finish now, sitting here, it can finish next day, it can finish any time. So we also don't know our lifespan, whether it's small or big. But we know we probably not last more than 100 years, let's say, approximation, 100 years beyond, especially during, all this current calamity of, COVID, God knows who survives, who lives. So, the point is, that the time has to be used wisely. Otherwise, what's the time? Now, in the same section of the Bhagavatam, when Saunaka Rishi is inspiring Sukadeva Goswami, to speak more and more about Krishna Katha, then Saunaka Rishi also talks about the importance of time. Ayur Harati, that verse comes there, that every rising and setting of the sun, a person is getting closer to death. So then Saunaka Rishi says, that what is the point in having any time with us if it is not spent in Krishna consciousness? Because every rising and setting of the sun, we are getting closer and closer to death. And then Saunaka Rishi goes on to give 3 more examples about the importance of time, 3 more analogies. Firstly, he says, that if, and he talks mainly about Grihamedis, and the karmis, he says, that if somebody wants to just live for the sake of living, If somebody wants to just, I'll give the 3 examples, one by one. If somebody wants to live just for the sake of living, then what is the point in having a human body? Because the human body is meant for something else. It is meant for Krishna consciousness. No? But if somebody just wants to live, then what is the point in having a human body? You might as well go and get a body of a tree. Why? Because trees are known to live for long time. Thousands of years they can live. So if it's just for living, then might as well be a tree. Second example. If you just want to live for the purpose of breathing, which is kind of similar thing, yeah? But so sweetness, when he brings out different ways of saying the same thing. If you just want to live like a tree. But if you just want to live to breathe heavily, which is also living only, but if you just want to live for the sake of breathing, then you might as well become a bellow. You know what a bellow is? Bellow is that thing, generally the goldsmiths, and blacksmiths, they will use to blow air into the flame, so that the flame gets more oxygen and inflames more. So like that bellow. Now we have of course got sophisticated bellows in our machinery, like that. So bellow. So you might because bellow, when you press that air to get oxygen into the fire to burn, that makes a lot of kind of breathing sound, like that, So if you just want to breathe, then might as well be a bellow. So then thirdly he says, if you want to just live for the purpose of procreation, or not even procreation, if you just want to live for the purpose of sexual indulgence, then you might as well be a beast. Because beasts are known, for indulging with the opposite sex, as much as they want, So he says, you might as well be a beast. So if you just want to live for the sake of living, be a tree. If you just want to live for the sake of breathing, be a bellow. If you just want to live for the sake of sexual indulgence, you might as well be a beast. Don't become a human being. Don't waste this human body. So much lessons for us to say, our time is limited, and in that, how do we maximize our Krishna consciousness? And in that section again, Prabhupada writes that, brilliant line, if you can memorize it. Time which is wasted cannot be compensated even with gold. Time which is wasted cannot be compensated even with gold. So this is the golden rule. The time that is wasted cannot be compensated even with gold. So therefore, utilizing our time appropriately in Krishna consciousness is of course, the main thing that I want to draw out with all these examples. Sometimes we say that we are just passing the time. Time pass chal raha hai, in Hindi mein, we are just passing the time, or time out, or idle time, or down time. In the office we will say, if there's not too much work, there is down time. The system is down. So there's so much things about wasting the time, down time, idle time, time pass, reading Times of India, times of this, so much times about times. The only thing that is important is the pastime of the Lord. When we do an activity, it becomes a time pass. But when the Lord does an activity, it becomes the pastime. That's the difference. Why does the Lord is Atma Rama? He is satisfied with everything that he has got. He doesn't need to work. But why does the Lord come and still do something in the material world as well as in the spiritual world? There is only one reason, absolutely only one reason, and that is for bliss. That is for happiness. His happiness goes up because he's Atma Rama, still it's incremental, and more so to enjoy the rasa with the devotees. But when we do an activity, if it's not in Krishna consciousness, then of course that any activity that we do is for a purpose of fulfilling a particular desire. And when the desire is fulfilled, that creates more desires, and therefore we end up doing more activities. And those activities create more desires, and then we end up doing more activities. And this is called karma bandhan. This is called cyclical effect of karma and fulfillment of desires. So that binds us. And these activities which we do for our personal desires are binding and not satisfying. Binding and not satisfying. There is no happiness out of it. Whereas conversely, as I already said, the activities that the Lord does, which is pastimes of the Lord, are not binding, neither they are boring, they are enlivening, they are blissful, they lead to happiness to the devotees as well as everybody who is engaged in that activity. So therefore, when we do activities that are devotional service, Because we are now associating and partaking into the pastimes of the Lord, even when we are serving Him in Melbourne, when we are serving Him, we are taking part in the pastimes of the Lord, therefore the happiness starts coming out of that activity. But if the activity is not devotional service, you and I know this through experience, that activity is not satisfying. It just creates more and more bondage and dissatisfaction, if anything. So, how does this happen? Why is that when we partake in the activities that are devotional service and not in those activities that are anti-devotional service or non-devotional service, no? Both of them are dissatisfying, anti-devotional service and non-devotional service. But the devotional service is satisfying, it is relishing, it is a rasa. Why? Because today is Jhulan Yatra, so I just want to draw some parallel to Jhulan Yatra, so I thought I'll speak on this. It's because if we know that the Lord has got unlimited energies. The Lord has got unlimited energies, and each of those energies work as per the desire of the Lord. When the Lord desires something, those energies just come into the picture and fulfill the desire of the Lord. So, for example, if the Lord wants to have gulab jamun, for example, or rasgulla, He doesn't have to go into the kitchen, and all those things and buy ingredients and all those things. Just because He desired, the energies will work and they will be gulab jamun. Just because the Lord wants to desire to create the material world, He'll just think and glance at Pradhan and Mahatattva and agitate, and the material world gets created, And that too, He's sleeping. We have to create something by walking or at least being awake. The Lord creates everything even when He's sleeping. How many of us can create something when we are actually sleeping? Standing and talking we can, maybe, if possible. But by sleeping, not possible for any human being. But the Lord creates the entire creation when He's actually sleeping. Sote, in Hindi may we say. So like that. So, the Lord desires, His energy works and it gets created. But when we desire, we have to put tons of effort into it to even get one gulab jamun, if we are lucky, if we are on time. So, having said that, there is one energy of the Lord, out of the unlimited energy that He has got, there is one energy of the Lord that kind of does not work under the subjugation of the Lord. If anything, the Lord works under the subjugation of that particular energy. And that energy is called Aladini Shakti. Aladini Shakti. What does Aladini Shakti means? And that is, as we know, now the personification of that is Srimati Radharani. No, Aladini means the pleasure potency of the Lord. So the Lord is so attracted to this particular energy of His that actually He subjugates Himself to Srimati Radharani and saves, and He is Atmaram, He is all blissful, but He gets more bliss when He is subjugated to Srimati Radharani. That energy is called Ladini Shakti. And that Ladini Shakti is what also gives us pleasure when we partake in the pastimes of the Lord. So Srimati Radharani is Bhakti personified. So when we help her save Lord Krishna, or when we save her and save Lord Krishna, she starts getting that, bestowing those messy drops of nectar on us, enjoying that Aladini Shakti. And that is why we sing this daily, Namaste Narashimhaya Prahladana Dadaine. So Prahlad Ahlad Dadaine. Prahlad. What does Prahlad mean? Prahlad means Ahlad, as we said. It's coming again from Ahladini Shakti, the pleasure potency of the Lord. So Ahlad means pleasure. And Prahlad Maharaj is full of pleasure because he is a pure devotee of the Lord. And Prahlad means he is pleasure condensed. It's like he's just saturated with pleasure, so much bliss in Krishna consciousness that nothing can penetrate him. If you throw him from the mountain, if you put him on the oil, if an elephant, runs over him, there is no disturbance or distress at all because he's saturated with pleasure. Like a metal. If you've got a sponge and you put it in water, the sponge will soak the entire water. But if you put a metal bar in water, the water will not penetrate the metal. Why? Because the metal molecules are so condensed that the water cannot penetrate. So Prahlad means that personality that is so concentrated with the molecule of bliss that no pain can concentrate him, can permeate him. So that's Prahlad. But that Prahlad Maharaj, which is pleasure condensed and saturated is Prahlad Ahlad Dahine. So Prahlad Ahlad is again pleasure. So for that Prahlad, somebody comes to give him pleasure. And who is that? Nrsimhadev. Namaste Narsimhaya Prahlad Ahlad Dahine. No? So even to that Narsimha, even to that Prahlad, Nrsimhadev gives him pleasure. So there is just, the point is, there is so much pleasure in Krishna consciousness in the pastimes of the Lord, such as, the Jhulan Yatra, Krishna Janmashtami, Balaram Purnima, everything is coming now, one by one. So even if we are partaking in these activities offline, from our home, doing little, Jhulan Yatra and Krishna Janmashtami at home, or, observing them, on our YouTube and whatever, Zoom and Teams and whatever, online, there is still that pleasure that can be, relished in them. So rather than being isolated and thinking, oh my God, I can't go to the temple, everything is closed, etc., etc., the pleasure is there. The pleasure, the beauty in Krishna consciousness is that the pleasure is in the service. We don't need pleasure in anything else. When we do a service, which is partaking ourselves in the pastimes of the Lord, we can extract pleasure. The Lord gives us that nectar of devotion and nectar of bliss, in the quantity as we surrender. So during this particular time of isolation and whatever else, working from home and not working and whatever, Krishna consciousness is always there for us, and that's the beauty, that we always can tap into the beauty, into the bliss of Krishna consciousness. Everything else in the material world is temporary. There's only three things that is eternal, that is permanent, to our permanent account. And those three things are the three B's: Bhagavan, Bhakt, and Bhakti. The three B's: Bhagavan, Bhakt, and Bhakti. This is the only three things that is permanent. Everything else is temporary. So Bhagavan is always there. Bhakti is there for us to to take on and become a devotee. If we can do these three things, then in reference to the verse for today, what janma we have taken, what type of birth we have taken, what type of activities we are doing, what type of lifespan we have is all irrelevant. Bhakti is not dependent on anything material. Bhakti is absolutely not dependent on anything material. Anybody, at any place, at any time can take up Krishna consciousness. All we need to do is give up our false ego and and take guidance from a devotee and surrender to a spiritual master, and we can tap into the bliss of Krishna consciousness. So last message, take away home message: time. Time is very important. Time is energy of Krishna. Krishna says, "Kalaosmi," I am time. So every moment should be utilized in Krishna consciousness. And one moment lost cannot come back, even if we have got tons of gold to buy that moment back. So that is the value of time. We use our time. Every time should be Krishna consciousness time, Krishna time, from now onwards. Okay, thank you very much. I will stop here. Any questions, comments, clarifications, corrections? Additions? No? If not, then we'll stop here. Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki Jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki Jai.